Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Off-Farm Income Podcast. Thank you very much for joining us here on our YouTube channel for episode number 800. Well, I'll tell you what, things are kind of in flux with the coronavirus, with everything, all the responses are going on to that, and I am taking the opportunity to get out as useful information as I can when I have the opportunity. So today's episode is just a little bit different than a normal Friday episode. I'm going to be speaking with Dr. Roger Hanagriff, the founder of the AET and a ag business and ag education associate professor at Texas A&M University, and we're going to be talking a lot about a video series that he has created to help people teach agriculture during all these school shutdowns, all this remote and distant learning that's going on that's not normal for agricultural classes. So we're going to be talking all about that. We'll just jump into it right now. Dr. Hanagriff, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Well, I'll tell you what, it's interesting times, and so I'm finding interesting things on the internet about agriculture and about, I don't know, everything that's going on right now, and your video series popped up, and I thought, man, that is something I want to profile. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Oh, you bet. Absolutely. And, thanks for inviting me and checking it out on YouTube. That was kind of fun to see somebody liking it.
Hey, you bet. You bet. Well, I know you just launched it, and we're going to talk about those here coming up in a second. I'd love to start off by just kind of introducing you to our audience. Would that be okay?
That would be great. All
right. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. So currently, on the intro, I've already talked about you being a professor there at Texas A&M and what you do. But what pathway led you to this? Tell us a little bit about your history.
You bet. Well, it's going to start with one of the probably most important things that influenced me as a high school student, or several things, I guess, and of course, family is number one that would influence me. My background, my dad had a small cow-calf herd, and so just involved in agriculture, lots of horses growing up, and always had an interest there and still do, but involved in FFA in high school, and that kind of set me on a path to go to college and major in agriculture. And my first approach or my first interest was actually agricultural education. As soon as I got involved in school, and I went to St. Houston State University, and my major was really just general ag. Then it became going to be ag education. Then it came to be agricultural economics and agricultural business. One of my professors there at the university got me involved early on in the Farm Business Management Contest, which is a career development event that high school kids participate in through FFA. And I just was amazed at the topics and the content and how do students know all this stuff. And so it really led me into that major. And so that kind of carried me through my undergraduate degree. And then I ended up also going on to Texas A&M University from there and got my master's in ag economics with finance is kind of my focus.
Okay.
And then, but left there and went and worked for the Texas prison system. It's one of the largest ag producers in our state. And they were looking for an assistant economist. Yeah, it was an interesting place to work. You can't really find anywhere in our industry as someone looking to learn more about farm management than working at the prison system. 2 feed mills, a cannery, processing facilities for livestock, of course, all the different production areas, all the way down to cauliflower and broccoli. And so it was a great place to work. Learned a lot about farm management. At the same time, kind of had our own business. My wife and I were running horse training and showing business. And so kind of that got big. And so it got me really kind of sidetracked. But what I really always have loved is education. And so I got a chance to go back and get my PhD back at Texas A&M, and that's kind of led me to where I am today as a professor, and I'm at Texas A&M University, Kingsville, now as a current faculty.
Okay. What part of Texas did you grow up in?
I grew up kind of central East Texas.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, around the west or east, I should say, of Houston. Not too far from where I live right now, and we're in central part of the state in Huntsville, Texas.
Okay. Now, I have always thought of Texas A&M as just being right there in College Station, but of course I live in Idaho, so I don't know enough about Texas. So tell me about the campus there where you're at and how many campuses Texas A&M has.
It is amazing, and to be honest, I had to look it up to make sure I didn't lie because I was not sure. The A&M system, like a lot of the universities across the country, have organized state universities or land grant universities like the A&M system, but they've branched out. Texas A&M has got 11 different campuses online. Texas A&M College Station is the mothership, if you will, the main campus. But all of the other campuses have a lot of unique potential. Tarleton State is a campus that is unique. West Texas A&M, Texas A&M Kingsville used to be formerly Texas A&I, but that's where I'm stationed now, and been in College Station as well, and now at A&M Kingsville as a faculty. But 11 different campuses. They even have a unique campus that A&M Kingsville is part of. It's called the Relish campus, and it stands for the flagship, of the A&M system. But it's the Relish campus, and it actually is allowing all the other universities to offer majors in College Station at a whole brand new campus that's connected with the junior college system. So again, 11 campuses with this unique Relish campus, that's connected all these universities together. So a wide reach.
Okay.
In Texas.
Well, very interesting. I love Texas, and you can bring up Tarleton State. I love Stephenville. That's one of my favorite towns in all of Texas. So that's a school I know about because scoped that out the last time I was there. Love it there, and yeah. And I've been over to your neck of the woods too.
It's a great. Oh, good. Well, it's a pretty area, and I've been to Idaho a few times. Worked with their FFA folks a bunch. Lex Godfrey's a guy I work with quite a bit, and you're in an awful pretty state for sure.
That is true. Well, very cool.
Absolutely.
Well, so let's talk about your video series. So you just kicked this off in March, at least from what I'm seeing on YouTube. What got all this started?
That's a great question. I now, my job at Texas A&M University in Kingsville, I'm actually located about 5 hours away. All my classes are hybrid format classes, and really this all got started for me in distance education when I got my PhD. Distance ed was something you but something you worked within to learn about. And for me, I always thought, wow, distance ed, I would rather just talk to someone directly and work with them. And so that's just how I was wired. But along the way, I've had opportunities to do things at a distance as a faculty. And also a group of friends of ours got together, and we actually built a online record-keeping system. It's called the AET. You may have heard of it before, but
absolutely,
it's a record system that's used in ag education and FFA, and those opportunities really laid out for me, how can I be in Central Texas and create a video resource for a teacher to use? So it got me into doing videos and sharing with people online different content, and it's pretty tough to do. You sit in front of a computer and you do a voiceover, maybe, or maybe if you get really cool, you use some kind of a notebook where you can write digitally and then record your voice over that, or you're looking for ways to make this interactive somehow, and it's a struggle. And so my position at Texas A&M University in Kingsville really pushed me into having to do more distance ed. And so I started posting my class videos on YouTube on a different channel to try to let my students see weekly lectures. But along the way, I learned about this new Lightboard presentation that you basically write on a piece of glass and you never take your eyes off the audience. You get a chance to look at them. And so I started building this Lightboard video thinking I would do this with my classes in Kingsville. And so I got it built just a month or two ago. And then here we are with this COVID-19. And teachers, not just myself, I've always been teaching, not always, but been teaching at a distance lately. So it was something I used for myself. But teachers started reaching out to me through my connections with knowing them through the AT record book or as a professor. Or, I also do a lot of the farm business management contest work in our state for one of the areas to develop these contests, which those contests aren't happening now. Right. Because of this. So teachers just reaching out and saying, do you have something I could share with my ag business students? And so I made a video just about the introduction to agribusiness. I think it's got like 300 and something views, maybe 200 views. It's got a bunch, but I tried to push that out there, and I did it through my normal channels. And then I thought, I ought to make this a series where I have several videos and maybe try to address certain topics. And so just kind of built the channel, started sharing it with ag teachers. That seemed to kind of start to get some traction. And so here we are today. I've got a plan for a lot more videos, but that's kind of how it got me started. First at distance ed, just to help my classes. But then with all of this, ag teachers reaching out and saying, what do you have where I could share with my students? And so that kind of got it started, a little organic.
Okay. Now, you said that you're teaching hybrid classes there in Texas. Now, up here in Idaho, I teach at a community college, and a hybrid class for us is half of the time in class, half the time online. Is it the same for you down in Texas?
It is. They don't specify necessarily it's half and half, but that's the traditional approach. So I do have weeks where I drive down to A&M Kingsville and have class traditionally face-to-face. Of course, with this COVID-19, that was one of the weeks I was going to go, and that's when this Lightboard studio for me became a way. I thought, I'm just going to put a camera up, and I'm just going to spend, 45 minutes talking to this camera like I would if I were there with the students. Yeah. And I sent it to them just, really scrap lumber and glass and a bunch of LED lights and a bunch of experimenting. I put it together and did that first one, and it was, they're not maybe good now either, but they weren't as good then for sure. And so just did that and sent it to those students and said, what do you think? And they were the first group that responded like, hey, that's cool. I like that. So that's how the hybrid courses should normally be for me, to go down there and have class face-to-face. But, of course, with this new preparation, we've all been pushed online more than we had in the past.
Oh, that's interesting. So did you invent this Lightboard thing? Because I've watched it on your videos. It looks really, really good.
Yeah, thank you. It's fun. No, I did not. Okay. I was just searching one day. Every week in my classes, I post stuff online, and you get tired of being the only one talking to the students or sharing something with them. So, is anybody else out there got something? So I was just looking one day on YouTube for a video about supply and demand in the marketplace for my freshman class. Okay. And when I pulled up the videos, I got a bunch of educational videos, but I got a video that looked completely different. There was a guy sitting at a desk, and he had looked like a computer screen, but you can see a frame, and he is writing, and it looks like he's writing with his left hand, and it shows up really well, and so I kind of clicked on it, and it's called a Lightboard. And no, there's lots of stuff on the internet about building them and making them out of different products. And but I saw some universities that were doing it, and just ask around and to my university, and they really hadn't heard of it. So made me dig a little deeper, and then I finally just got the schematics for what it would take to build one, and just made it. And then see if it worked. Yeah. Very cool. No, I didn't invent it though. I wish I did. It's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Well, so your videos, so these ag business videos, were they originally made for your college students? Because I know that they're being used for high school students now as well.
No, not really. I've got a set of videos that I share with my college classes. These videos, I'm really trying to target to high school students. Okay. And each video, and I try to get a little better at them. I've got a blessing and a curse, and that's that I can just talk too much. So when you put these videos out there, you're trying to get pretty tight and not waste a lot of space and time. And so I've kind of had to challenge myself to get them even tighter, trying to develop something a teacher could give to a student and they could watch. And they're I'm trying to give them 3 to 5 things they would learn. And so each video for this YouTube channel that I have has got 3 to 5 questions, pretty tight in time, trying to keep it 15 minutes or so. And they're really just meant for the high school classroom. I just recently released a national invitational farm business management contest, which is something I've also written and done a lot. Again, we would normally have this in April,
right,
face-to-face in Kingsville, Texas, but that didn't happen. And so I've done this national contest online where teachers can register their students to compete just like they would if they were in a traditional contest. But it allows itself to be online. You're taking an exam.
Yeah.
And one of the struggles with that exam, and I've written them and given questions to teachers so they could teach their kids, learning from a question is just a backwards way to go at it. All you can do is answer that exact question over again. You change the numbers a little bit, but that didn't seem really like learning to me. So these videos are also targeted to just share some important concepts with students in more of an educational way. And then after they watch them, then hopefully the farm business management contest, it's like a reference or a resource. So that's the other intention for these videos too.
Okay. Now,
classroom and contest prep.
Gotcha. Now, I want to ask you if you've gotten any feedback from people, or maybe if you're getting a wider audience than you initially intended. And the reason I want to ask you that is the audience of this show, we interview 2 FFA students a week. So we're really ingrained with the FFA, and we're profiling a lot of what FFA students are doing and building businesses and their entrepreneurship SAEs and all of that type of stuff. But then on my Friday episodes, which is when I'm airing this particular interview with you, we generally profile somebody who's no longer in high school and they're operating their ag business and their farm, or their ag business so they can support their farm. And as I was watching your videos and I was hearing what you had to say, and I was thinking about my own level of knowledge, I thought, for somebody who, especially somebody who wants to transition and they want to begin farming and they're looking for a way to make all this work, I felt like your videos could be useful to that person as well. Have you had any feedback indicating that?
I haven't yet, but I hope that's the outcome. One of the things that interested me in becoming an educator was not just to be a professor and educate students while they're in college, and give them tools while they're in college. You really hope, and I don't know if this is the goal of every professor, but I think it is. We really hope that content we share with students is applicable in the real world. And really it's, learning from just books alone and having that knowledge doesn't really carry you through. There's there's this innate, I don't know if it's almost a subjective use of data and information you're given to be able to apply it in a real world setting. That's kind of the goal for me. So, I'm glad you said that, because I hope that someone that's not in a high school class, someone that's not trying to prepare for a contest, those ought to be the superficial intentions of any educational outreach. I hope that a producer would watch this, and or anyone looking to start their own business would watch this, and maybe in some ways stepping back and saying, okay, so demand is about these factors, or supply is about these factors. And if that can't help someone in business, then I really missed the mark I ought to be shooting for. So I hope as time goes on that these have some other value, and that would be a great one.
Well, it's
a real world application.
Well, and I completely agree. It's interesting to me. So I've got an animal science degree. That's my bachelor's degree, is animal science, and so that's what's kind of led me down the path that I'm on. But then I became an entrepreneur later and started building businesses later. And so as I got to doing that and I started developing our farm here in Idaho, I actually went out online and I found an old ag economics textbook and bought it, and just started reading about ag economics just out of an old textbook, because I knew that was an area that I'm lacking. So for everybody listening right now who you're starting your own farming enterprise, or you're trying to build that business up, even though these videos are being pushed out to help in high school classes right now. I feel like there's a lot of beneficial information for the rest of us. I'm on that list too. Those of us who know a lot about ag, but not necessarily the ag economics side. I think there's a lot of useful information there.
Well, I appreciate that, and you hope so. When I had students, in my job at the university has been a wide range. I've done workshops like with producers as like an extension person would, and I enjoy that kind of opportunity. Or I've also been the rodeo coach at the universities and talked with a lot of parents that look at you across the table and say, what should my student major in to go to college so that they can achieve this career goal? Mm-hmm. And you look at them and think, all right, I'm going to give you a major, but that's really up to the student.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, just throw that out the window, because when you leave, you've just got to have a lot of tools in your toolbox. And agribusiness is not that tool, or economics or business is not always that tool put in the toolbox. Mm-hmm. But when everybody leaves college and they go to start their own business, I do think it's one of those tools people then try to fill back in later. Mm-hmm. or go get, because it's not always there. The USDA puts out a job outlook in a 5-year series, and they've been doing it for 20-something years. Agribusiness is always one of the number one areas of employment mm-hmm. or knowledge. But I would say probably it's nearly 100% indirectly valuable in all the other areas. Consequently, if you're an ag business person, but you don't understand production agriculture, you're also behind,
sure.
As well. So it's all of us are hunting to balance out. And so I hope these videos, I'm glad to hear you say that, but I would hope, just without even directly thinking of it, I would hope they would have some value to fill in these gaps.
Well, I certainly think they do. And everything right now is kind of in flux with this COVID-19, this coronavirus deal. And so for my audience there, I usually talk about FFA on Mondays and Wednesdays, but I'm asking you a little bit more about this because I want this episode to be a resource for all the FFA instructors that listen to my show around the country. How are you intending, like if a high school teacher was to call you tomorrow and say, I hear you got these videos, how can I use these to teach my students while they're at home and we're doing distance education, what would you tell them?
And that is a good question, and that's probably was the first question that really got any of this started in an organized fashion. The intent was for a teacher to, find a topic on my list, and I try to keep adding to it, but try to find a topic and send the link to the students. And as they watch the video, every one of my videos has a description, and in that description, not knowing enough about YouTube either, by the way, I'll admit, I could be doing this completely wrong, but in the description are 5 questions, 3 to 5 questions, uh-huh. and they are kind of learning objectives is the academics that would throw at us. But these student learning objectives would be the 5 questions, or 3 or 4, whatever's there. They would be the questions that the teacher would then ask the students, hey, after you watch the video, answer these questions and send me back the answers. And so my simple idea is like I was a guest lecturer in their class.
Okay.
So if we had the normal class and I walked in, which I've done some of that in some high schools, when you walk in and you get done with a lecture, the teacher always says, I'm going to ask you 3 questions from his presentation. And so that would be exactly the way I would say this. Share my video link. Tell them to respond on those questions that I've outlined in the description of the video, and that would be a simple way to use it, I think.
Okay. All right. Very good. And how many are you planning on making? Do you have a number in mind?
I don't. I'll tell you what I did, Matt. I pulled up the National AF&R Content Standards, which is something we use in our AET record book when students do any activity. We're always wanting them to connect skills. Mm-hmm. And I pulled up the agribusiness sector, and I mapped out that whole pathway. And I came up with about 12 different areas. And I looked at that and thought, if I were to make a video, it has to connect to these areas, right? If it's agribusiness as a content area. And so as I looked at that, it got a little daunting, because when I got done thinking of what presentations would be in there, the number was too much. So I got rid of that file. I said, This is too big. Let me just start off with the basics and how many would this build to? I don't really know. Right now, I think I've got 8 in there. I actually just did one on price risk, which kind of could be something we end up talking about. But prices are changing in our economy all the time,
right.
And right now is a great example of prices just kind of almost just electrified of risk and unintended consequences and uncertainty. So I just loaded a video on that. Eventually, I could see probably having anywhere from 40 to 50 videos out there. I've getting close to 10, and I just kind of started playing with this. So
okay,
we'll see where it goes.
Okay, very good. Well, that's kind of how I started with podcasting, and I'm up to 800. I think this is episode 800. Yeah. So it happens. It can happen to you.
I don't think I got that much in me, but we'll see.
I'm sure you've got more in you than me when it comes to knowledge. Anyway.
I don't know.
Well,
I don't know about that.
I want to ask you about some ag business questions, kind of outside of the classroom, but about COVID and all that. But before I do that, I want to make sure and pay you a really nice compliment on AET. And I say this because I'm not an ag teacher, but I am somebody who is spending a lot of time getting to know what's going on in the ag classroom. I've been involved in some judging. I've been involved. I sit on an advisory committee for an FFA chapter, and then of course I do the podcast and all the broadcasting and the interviews with FFA students and things like that. And then I have got one product that we sell to FFA chapters to teach FFA students about entrepreneurship and how to build small businesses for their entrepreneurship SAEs. And as I go around the country and I'm speaking with FFA advisors and I'm talking to them either on the phone or in person or whatever that may be and saying, we've got this course, we'd love it if you would check it out and see if it fits in to teach your students about entrepreneurship. I would say probably 60% of the time, the first thing that comes back to me is, will it fit in with the AET? So you have got a wide reach out there in the United States, which you already know, but you've made a fine product. People are just using the heck out of it.
Well, we've been blessed and lucky. Intelligence has got to be way down the list. Just mostly blessed and lucky. The idea of kids tracking what they do, which is really the whole idea of the AET, that the Ag Experience Tracker was the idea, is just core to Ag Ed. Rufus Stimson, the father of the SAE, the Supervised Ag Project or Experience, in the early 1900s laid out what we ought to be tracking. And it's just really cool that it's the same goals today. It hasn't really changed. It's gotten more complicated, that's for sure. But we were just lucky enough to look at I did a lot of workshops with ag teachers for years on the other record systems out there. And it was just getting educated constantly about what it needs to be. But what it also needs to be is real world. And so, luckily, my experience in the prison system really is an accountant. My dad was a CPA, and my major was accounting, also as a double major. And so, that training kind of kept me in the right mindset of really how accounting and farm management, accounting record keeping should happen. And so, it's just been really fun to put that out there and have teachers and states just really adopt and have that same core value of, the early establishments of the Smith-Hughes Act and USDA and ag education, that idea is important, and it ought to be real world.
Yeah.
And so it's been fun to learn about beekeeping. I don't really kind of understand beekeeping very well, but I had to learn about that as a project, and then how do you keep records on that?
Sure.
And then, how do you keep records in a livestock industry? Or how do you keep records if you're an embryo transfer and you're selling embryos online? These students are doing just cool stuff, as you know, and as you showcase in your shows. So it's just cool to have a system that students are confident enough in and want to learn how they can adapt it to track their experience. And so we're lucky that we work in a unique and value-added area of ag education and FFA. So it's been cool. I appreciate you saying that. We've just been really fortunate to work with a lot of good people all over.
Well, that's great. All right. Well, let me ask you, in the time we've got left, I want to ask you about the coronavirus and some of the things we're seeing. So I did an episode just a week ago with an ag forecaster. and we talked all about meat prices, and then all of a sudden, questions that I had last week have come to fruition this week. One of the things that I saw just in the last 24 hours is I think Tyson and maybe Cargill, I can't remember for sure, but are shutting down some of their processing plants because people are getting infected with the coronavirus. And it's just obviously people that are going to be bringing livestock to these places to be slaughtered and be processed. There's just a big stop sign put up. And so I wanted to ask you about that. And from your perspective or from what you know, in terms of what might happen with price and what's going to happen with this backup of livestock that's ready, it's finished, it's ready to go.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. One of my videos actually, and I was doing this for my class, but one of my videos on demand elasticity was I just ran across an article that talked about the same thing you're looking at, the supply chain of egg production for the grocery stores has been just swamped. And so when you went into a grocery store, you could only buy 2 packs of eggs.
Right.
And this article had egg prices, and it showed a change in price, the average retail price nationwide, and then the amount of volume. And so I just pulled those numbers out and did a demand elasticity calculation and then put it in my video because it was interesting to see, because eggs is something that's not a product that we ever pay attention to at all, really, as a price. It's not making the news. But like you said, now it's in the news. Toilet paper is, I guess, too, but eggs are in the news. And anyway, it was what I calculated. It was a 44% price increase of eggs and only a 14% drop in purchasing. And we've always used eggs as an example of an inelastic demand, meaning people will buy it at no matter what the price is.
Okay.
They just won't buy quite as much. But so I think that kind of falls into what you're looking at today. I do think we've got lots of disruptions in our supply chains, and they probably are just going to get, as we're talking, they could get worse. And these supply chains not being able to get the product on the retail side are going to have an impact. And then on the production side, they're going to have an impact. And that's just what's wild to see. But we're going to see changes, I think, in the retail and the production sector in prices. It's just hard to predict what.
Yeah, it's so interesting. We already had a disruption in the supply chain in terms of restaurants with their outputting of products slowing down so much. And so you already had that. And so that was obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, you're the expert, but in my mind, that was going to reduce the price of beef and pork and things like that because the demand was dropping. But now with this place in the middle of the supply chain saying we can't take your animals right now because we're shut down until we get done with this COVID or coronavirus, whatever you want to call it. Now all of a sudden you've got ranchers or you've got buyers that have live animals on the hoof. What are they going to do? What are they going to do with those animals?
Yeah.
That's interesting to me.
Yeah, it is, and it's hard for me to imagine that the supply chain would just stop taking animals. Like a packer. Yeah, I could see them reducing the hours that their employees and spreading them further out. The local sale barn here is a good example. We were talking last week about going to the sale and looking to buy some things, and they're having the sale. They're just spreading people out. They said the numbers showing up at the sale are also way off, as you would imagine.
Sure.
And so it seems hard to even look forward and predict it. But if we have cattle in production process that need to get moved, I don't see how they don't get moved. It's just they might get moved at a much lower price, which is what's scary. Like you said, prices could be down. But in the retail side, we're looking at less product getting there, and we're probably going to see a lot of prices going up.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because eventually, as we come back online, you would expect demand to rise. But then, as we talked about last week, you've got a lot of people who've never done this before, but they've filled their freezers with meat, and so there's a lot of inventory sitting out there. It's already been purchased. Yeah,
I think that's exactly right. And when we look at the factors of demand, it's things like numbers of customers, availability, to buy, which is down, income, which obviously with people getting laid off and hours getting cut, and you have less income. And so we could end up with a lot of pent-up demand, but it's not going to be shown in the market right away.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Like you said, they've pre-purchased, and so it's an odd time, that's for sure.
And now on the flip side, with perishable goods, so for example, we're seeing milk dumping now. We're seeing people dumping milk. What about our vegetable and our fruit producers? They're producing a perishable product, and there is no delay. There is no slowing down. It's ready now, and it can only be preserved so long until it gets into a cannery or it gets into a place like that. What do you see there? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, again, it's hard to predict what's going to happen. I could sure see a lot of alternative production practices getting put into place. I did some work a long time ago with a company called Nolan Ryan Beef when they first originally established that company, and they had a situation where ended up with a lot of product ready to go to the retailer, and then the retailer didn't want it anymore.
Okay.
And so they ended up with a huge push of product, which I think is kind of what you were talking about here, right? All of a sudden, I've got this supply chain ready to move, and then it just stops and starts backing up. Where does it go? And I guess in the dairy industry, we look at them dumping, and it just kind of baffles my mind with problems that we have that's even a result. But what happened with Nolan Ryan Beef and other companies when they get to that, I mean, you shift to a frozen product stage. You shift to processing in a whole nother way. And so I think those are a lot of opportunities for processors that are in that business. That they'll have opportunity to increase what products they do blast freezing with and packaging or dehydration or other ways that they're going to try to preserve this product. And I hope those are the outcomes other than just dumping the product.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a fascinating discussion. Really appreciate you taking the time to come on and share it with us today. And by the way, I'll say it for all the ag teachers that are in my audience, thank you for making those videos. I know everybody is scrambling for resources right now as they go to online education, and it's not something they've ever really done. And so I know those videos are much appreciated.
You bet. Well, thanks for having me and just sharing it with those out there. I appreciate that a lot.
You bet. And before we wrap it up, where should people go if they want more information, they want to find your videos, or they want to ask you a question, send you an email? How would you like them to do that?
You bet. I appreciate it. The easiest way just is my Gmail, probably. That would be R and then Hanagriff, which is HANAGRIFF @gmail.com. They can also find me pretty easy through searching on the web, and the YouTube channel is really just Roger Hanagriff, and then they'll find the videos there.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and do this, sir.
Oh, you bet, Matt, and thanks for having me, and good luck to you and all the teachers out there and your listeners. I'm sure lots of innovative ideas are going to come out of this that really create a lot of opportunity, and hope that's something everybody can capture.
Well, thank you for being here, everybody. Special thanks to Dr. Roger Hanagriff for coming on and sharing that great information with us today. And as always, enjoy your journey to the ultimate lifestyle business, agriculture.